Welcome to the channel Learn with Danish. Subscribe and hit the bell icon. Hello everybody. In the previous video we had a talk on Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness second part. In this video we would be concentrating on third and final part of Heart of Darkness. Let us just get into the text as such. In the second section, last part, we saw that Charlie Marlowe as well as the manager goes through the inner station in order to meet Kurtz, because we see that Kurtz is not being heard of for quite a long time and he's eagerly waiting to see how Kurtz looks like. Russian trader is talking to Marlowe when the section closes or the part 2 closes. We'll see what happens in the next part. When the third section begins, we see that the Russian trader begs Marlowe to take away Kurtz quickly. He's the only one that is there with Kurtz right now, and he actually begs him to take Kurtz away quickly as possible because he's very ill. And he recounts his meeting with Kurtz, and it is through his meetings that we see that the Russian trader happens to know that Kurtz is filled with knowledge of different things, from economics to love basically. The trader is the one who has nursed Kurtz on 2 occasions, and he's extremely ill now. Extremely ill now means he's under madness right now. Marlowe looks through the binoculars and sees several severed heads turned facing the station house. So this particular sight actually repels Marlowe. He's not surprised because he repels himself back. And he says that the reality, he thought that these are all ornamental decoration bulbs like thing that was hanging in that station when he looked at the binoculars when he's coming through the steamer. But ultimately he finds out that these are all the skulls of rebels that had agitated against Kurtz. So Kurtz is now a cannibal basically. He's now an animal. And he's in a mad condition. That's what the Russian trader is trying to say. And he says that he needs to be treated very quickly. He doesn't have the medicine. He doesn't have the treatment as such of right now. So he needs to be taken to Europe back as soon as possible. And that is begged by the Russian trader. This head, seeing the heads on the house station indicates the brutality of the inner brutality that's inherent in Kurtz right now. The trader says there is no medicine and Kurtz is shamefully abandoned by the company. So this is the picture of the skull that is hanging around in the inner station, Kurtz's house. The pilgrim emerges from the station house with Kurtz on the stretcher. Right, he is now very ill. And when he's coming out on the stretcher, we see that African natives who are actually considering Kurtz to be their mythical deity comes out from the forest, and it is then the Kurtz speaks to them. It is only after Kurtz speaks to them they are moved backward. Otherwise they are in a force who is coming to attack people or attack these pilgrims who are taking away their mythical deity. So basically tribal mental setup is going on inside that community right now in the inner station of the company. Kurtz received the letter from the company and says that he is glad to see Marlowe. So Marlowe was given the letter from the company in Brussels, and he's asked to give it to Kurtz, and Marlowe delivers that letter and says that he's glad to see Kurtz. He doesn't have a conversation. We see that he's taken to the pilot box of the steamer for getting fresh air, and the manager enters that pilot box, and when the manager enters the pilot box, Marlowe goes off. Kurtz and the manager speaks inside the private cabin of the steamer, and when the manager speaks, Marlowe goes off and he's with the Russian trader now. And Marlowe sees 3 native African on the shore That is, they are on the steamer, and he sees three native African on the shore, among which one is a beautiful, superb woman who has many ornaments. The woman is described with the finery of her ornaments. The ornaments that she wore was extremely expensive. They were of tusks, they were of ivory, and it indicated some special woman was standing there on the shore. And it is only later that he comes to know that the trader implies in an indirect manner, he doesn't say it directly, implies that she is Kurtz's mistress and has caused him trouble. It is this woman who has caused him trouble, because woman, according to Marlowe, is considered to be the ideal of civilization, and the men actually does everything for their woman. Men actually does everything for their woman. They conquer lands, they build up the economies, they get to fit themselves into the society through women. So they, according to Marlowe, woman is considered to be the ideal of civilization, and the madness that is caused in Kurtz's mind is basically due to this African native woman, according to the Russian trader. Now we'll just see the picture of the Kurtz's African mistress. Actually, she's not the African mistress, but I just borrowed some pictures from net. She's the mistress, and she wears lots of ornaments. That's the picture to show that she's filled with. I didn't get the whole scape picture. You can assume that she wears all these ornaments, and this ornaments looks her magnificent. This ornament looks her superb. It might not be the complexion that she's having. It is the ornaments. The materialistic thinking of the European system is projected through Marlowe's mind. Marlowe is the one who actually describes her physical appearance or her outer appearance to be extremely beautiful. The manager comes out, and we see that there is a quarrel that's going on inside the private cabin between the manager and the Kurtz. And the manager comes out and tells Marlowe that Kurtz's unsound methods have closed the district off to the company. He's having a very unsound method. Right. Now, for everybody, Kurtz is actually a symbol right now. We'll discuss about that in the last part. The manager comes out and tells that Kurtz is unsound. The methods that he's implying right now is unsound, not based on the values of the companies. He was asked to write a report on the suppression of savage customs, but all these reports are being rejected right now in his mind. Marlowe tells the manager that Kurtz is a remarkable man. So the opposite happens. The opposite is being said by Marlowe actually. Marlowe says to the manager that Kurtz is a remarkable man. I am not agreeing with your hypocritical statement. I say that he is a very remarkable man, hence becoming unsound for the company. So with this statement, Marlowe becomes a kind of outcast for the company authorities, especially the pilgrims and the manager that is present over there. The Russian trader tells Marlowe that it was Kurtz's intention to attack the steamer through that narrow channel earlier, because he wanted the steamer to go back, assuming that he's dead. So he doesn't want to return to Europe. He wants to stay with these native African people in their native culture, with the barbaric culture. And Russian trader says that it was Kurtz's intention to attack the steamer, and it is through his orders that the native Africans attacked the steamer. He was not surprised with this, because he knows that he is now a kind of uncivilized, barbaric person. He's seeing him in person right now. Till now, he is just not exposed to reality, but now he's really exposed to reality. Now the symbol and the reality is extremely confronting or extremely conflicting there. Marlowe reveals that the manager would hang the Russian trader, and it is later that Marlowe reveals that manager would hang the Russian trader. And hearing this, also the Russian trader says that it's all there in his mind. He knows that the manager is not in good terms with him, and somehow or the other he will do some kind of atrocities towards the trader. So this is not a big deal for the Russian trader hearing the news. Marlowe confronts with Kurtz in a dark forest that night, because Marlowe sees that Kurtz actually escapes from his bed and crawls on four legs inside the forest to their native place. Kurtz was annoyed, basically. He's annoyed, and we see that it was due to the Kurtz assumes that Marlowe is also standing in between. He doesn't know Marlowe too much, but he assumes that Marlowe is a typical European guy who is going against the principles of Kurtz as such. Marlowe could not appeal in the name of anything high or low, because nothing would be entering into Kurtz's mind right now. Kurtz has kicked himself loose of the earth. That's the situation of Kurtz right now. And Marlowe suggests that Africa is responsible for this, especially that African woman who is responsible for the effective madness in Kurtz. We see that the steamer departs at noon next day, and the Kurtz mistress rushes down to the shore and calls out to him. Kurtz's mistress sees that Kurtz is departing from the land inner stations out there, and as he departs, mistress is calling out the name of Kurtz in a very loud manner, and hearing this, the native African people over there also cry to their loudest, and there is an uproar by natives, and it is only through Marlowe's whistle that the natives all go off. Only the lady remains on shore looking at the steamer till it vanishes off from her eyes. The current speeds the steamer progress back towards civilization. It indicates that they are going back to Europe. They are going from the heart of darkness, that is the inner station. They are traveling to Europe for a better treatment. Kurtz is going back to his original place, Brussels. The manager is happy of Kurtz's condition, and he ignores Marlowe. Both of them are categorized under the same category of unsound people by the pilgrims as well as the manager. So regarding Kurtz, he's not at all worried, because he knows that one day or the other Kurtz will be dead, and he ignores Marlowe because he's not a big threat to this manager. Kurtz takes his audience and muses with his philosophical quotes in the steamer, wherein we see that Kurtz uses philosophical thoughts of fame, his ideas, his knowledge related to economics, his knowledge related to love. All these things are kept on blabbered by Kurtz, and this blabbering increases as days go by. When his thickness increases, his blabbering also increases. His words indicates plan for fame and fortune. Then suddenly we see that the steamer breaks down, and it is during this time that Kurtz and Marlowe becomes ill at the same time. Marlowe, in the sense, he's starting to get ill, starting to become sick, because he's been traveling all the time long, and Kurtz is already ill, and he's nearing his death. Basically, he's on his deathbed, you can say. And he also foresees that the manager would take over his position, and in order to prevent that, he gives Marlowe a bundle of papers for safekeeping, and these papers include several pamphlets, several reports related to the commission that he was imposed on by the directors of board of company. Kurtz thinks that it is his duty to disseminate his ideas. That is why he's keeping on blabbering whatever he feels like. His ideas should reach the people. His ideas should reach the million people. That's what his ideology is about. And Kurtz admits to Marlowe that he is waiting for death. He's waiting for death means he's waiting for his own death. Kurtz cries out the horror at the end in his deathbed. Marlowe joins the manager in the dining hall. By this time, Marlowe joins manager, and the dining hall is overrun by flies, indicating that there is something dead or decayed in that steamer. The servant comes and tells them that Mr. Kurtz is dead. Mr. Kurtz he dead, you might be remembering, is the opening line of T.S. Eliot's poem The Hollow Man that I have done in the previous video. Just check out the previous video for getting the background history of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. So the servant comes and says that Mr. Kurtz he dead. The pilgrims bury Kurtz the next day. So it is only the next day that pilgrims bury Kurtz, and Marlowe succumbs to illness and he nearly dies. This is a picture of the film Apocalypse Now, wherein Marlon Brando is playing the role of Kurtz, and it is the scene where he is dying. Kurtz, the last scene, the horror. That's last word of Kurtz. Marlowe barely survives his illness and he returns to Brussels, the white sepulchral land, referring to the book of Matthews. It is the aunt who actually employs him in the company, who nurses him also after his return. And the company's representative actually comes to his home and tries to retrieve the papers that is given by Kurtz. He actually rejects it, and in fact he tears off the pamphlet's last page, the postscript where Kurtz has written, "Exterminate all the brutes." Marlowe gives him only the pamphlet on suppression of savage customs with the postscript torn off. That is the only pamphlet he's given. The representative actually threatens him if he has not given the whole paper, he would be screwed up like thing. And Kurtz's cousin, there is another person who comes on to Marlowe. It is Kurtz's cousin. There is no better mention of him, and he says that he is the cousin of Kurtz, and takes some letters to the family and says Kurtz was a great musician. And they both start talking to each other about Kurtz's variety of knowledge, and both comment him as a universal genius. It is Kurtz's cousin as well as Marlowe who comments upon Kurtz as a universal genius. Marlowe is now left with only few letters, and a picture of Kurtz is intended. This is the last scene of the section where Marlowe is left with only few letters. And this is almost 1 year past the death of Mr. Kurtz. He meets Kurtz's intended after 1 year, and she continually praises him and asks Marlowe how well did he know Kurtz. That's a question that the intended, the fiancée of Kurtz, asks Marlowe when he meets her. She's still mourning. Even after 1 year, she's still mourning on the death of Kurtz. We had an African mistress. You don't know what is happening to that African mistress, but this girl, there's no mention of the name here. She still mourns on the death of Kurtz, and she continually praises him and asks Marlowe how well did he know Kurtz. Marlowe replies that he knew him as well as it is possible for one man to know another. He is a very diplomatic person. He deals in a very diplomatic style, stating that he knows him in the sense Kurtz, as well as it is possible for one man to know another. The lady, the fiancée, what did she do last? What does she inquire last? She inquires about his last words, and Marlowe, instead of saying that his last words were the horror, he says to this lady that Kurtz's last name was her name only, and that is what she also wished for. She is really satisfied with that answer. Marlowe ends the story here, and we have a break here of the Marlowe's narrative, and slowly the unnamed narrator comes off and he looks off onto the sky, dark sky, which is now dark by night, and it makes the water lead into the heart of an immense darkness. That is the last sentence of that particular text. The water leads into the heart of immense darkness. It indicates that there is still darkness that is going on in Africa relating to the colonial elements. So Kurds here is picturized as a symbol for different people. For the natives, he is a mythical deity. For Marlowe, he is just a series of nightmares. For the manager or the pilgrims, he is just a scapegoat to be punished and to be ruined if he is not doing the European job or the job of civilizing the African people, which he is not doing as such. So that is the entire text. We have dealt with all the three parts in detail. I hope that you have understood the three parts. You can comment on each video if you have any doubts related to that particular video. Until then, with a new literature and a new writer, it's me, Danish, signing off. Have a nice day. Learn with Danish.